Good evening. This week we will be celebrating the holiday of B'SHVAT, the 15th of the month of Shvat. During this holiday, we have a custom to partake of fruit, to enjoy the special blessing that the Almighty has given us. We have an interesting pastime, and that is not only to partake of the fresh, luscious fruit of the land of Israel, but also to eat dried fruit from abroad, from the diaspora. That's what we'd like to understand is what is the significance of this custom and what is the significance of B'SHVAT. The Bible tells us that the Jewish people were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God saved them. The question arises, if God wanted to save them, and God killed a large segment of the Egyptian population, as he did during the 10 plagues and at the Red Sea, why didn't the Almighty just wipe out the entire Egyptian population and allow the Jewish people to remain in Egypt? Why couldn't Egypt be the promised land? The Bible tells us the answer, that Egypt and Israel are very, very different. Egypt receives its water supply from the Nile River. There is very little rain in the land of Egypt. People dig canals around the Nile, and that's how they irrigate their fields. In the land of Israel, however, there are very few rivers, and they're very small rivers compared to the Nile. Israel gets its water from rain. The answer is that the Almighty wanted us to be in a land that has rain. That's what the meaning of the verse, that the land I will be bringing you to is not like the land of Egypt, where you irrigate your fields by walking with your feet. Eretz Israel, there's drinks, there's water coming from the heavens. If we listen to God, then we will receive an adequate supply of rain, and if not, we will receive less than what we need. So we have a special measure of hashgacha pratit, of divine providence, which is unique to the land of Israel, that the basic need of water depends on our actions, how we relate towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God Almighty. It's very interesting to mention the Gemara. The Talmud in Tractate Ta'anit says that first the rain falls in Israel and then in the rest of the world. This cannot mean literally that first rain falls in Israel then the rest of the world, because it's just not so physically. Rather, it means in a spiritual sense that the blessing of rain comes through the land of Israel. How are we to understand this? One aspect of this is that we see a special blessing of rain. The land of Israel has never had a major flood. Today, as we sit here in January, the year 2011, we hear reports of major floods in Australia, where an area the size of France and Germany combined has been covered with water. There's major flooding in Brazil, which is causing extensive damage. So too in the Philippines. Reports keep on coming of big problems over there that relate to receiving a tremendous amount of water and rain The land of Israel receives just what it needs when we listen to God, and less if we don't. So there's a blessing, and the blessing is that the rain will never become a curse. It's only a blessing. It's not a flood, usually. Even if there are floods, there are no recorded events of major loss of life. Maybe 1 or 2, 3 or 4 people through flash floods, which sometimes come in the southern part of the country without warning, but never on a large scale. Another idea that relates to the blessing coming through Israel is that because Israel receives just about what it needs, or sometimes less, the Israelis have developed many different types of irrigation systems, computerized irrigation, drip-drop systems, to make the most of the water that it receives, and it has exported these ideas to many other countries in the world. It's interesting to think about the rain cycle and the different types of rain that fall. Besides rain, there's also snow and ice. It's interesting how snow really is a tremendous blessing of the Almighty. Without for the snow, the roots of many trees and plants would freeze to death in the winter. Imagine what it would cost to supply a carpet that would have to cover thousands of square miles in many cold countries to protect these roots. God has saved us this expense and this bother. He gives us the snow, and all the roots are protected. Let's take a look at ice. We know from physics that when any liquid or solid or even gas, the hotter it gets, the more it expands. The colder it gets, the more it contracts. That's why streets and roads have to be repaired, because they constantly are expanding and being constricted by the elements of the weather. But there is one exception to this rule, and that is water. And only between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius. When water reaches 4 degrees, something miraculous happens. Instead of continuing to contract, all of a sudden it begins to expand. Imagine what would happen if God did not constantly renew this amazing miracle, which we call the animality of water. It's not normal, but it's really a miracle. Imagine if a sea or an ocean would begin to freeze, and the frozen water would sink to the bottom of the river and the sea and the lake and the ocean. Soon, all around the ice caps, and in many northern and southern countries close to the ice caps, there would be millions of cubic feet or meters of ice. All the fish in the rivers and the lakes and the seas would die. They would have no room to live. In spring and in summer, when this ice would melt, we would find humongous streams of water coming down from the ice caps, and from these rivers, etc., into the rest of the world. The streams would probably reach a tremendous speed due to their sheer volume. So to save us all this, God has created this miracle that precisely between the degrees 0 and 4 Celsius, the water expands. So we see many miracles relate to the rains, the rain cycles, precipitation, snow, and ice. Why was the 15th of Shvat chosen for this date of celebration? And that is, as our Talmud, our oral law tells us, that by Tu B'Shvat, by the 15th day of the Hebrew month of Shvat, which comes out this coming Thursday, most of the rainfall of the year has already fallen. That's why this day was chosen. It also has halachic significance for this reason, and that is that the tiths, the special gifts that are given to the priests and the Levites, must be given from fruits of the same year. All the fruits in which the chanatah, the blossoming of the flowers on the trees, took place before the 15th of Shvat belong to the present year, which means now we're before Tu B'Shvat, and the ones which will blossom after the 15th of Shvat, after this coming Thursday, will belong to the following year. I thank you very much for listening.